A team of cavers hammers part of a cave in Pennsylvania. As they dig deeper into the cave, they discover a vast and abandoned chamber within the cave. They immediately inform the surface team of the chamber's discovery, but suddenly a swarm of unknown bat-like creatures violently kill the researchers. Then they fly out of the cave and go to the loudest area. Allie is a young girl who loses her hearing in a car accident. As she walks down the street, looking at something on her tablet, a group of boys from behind taunt her using sign language. She knows this because she quickly gets used to her deafness and can sense everything around her, but she chooses to ignore their taunts. Allie's father Hugh and his friend Glenn work as engineers. In the middle of their meeting, Hugh receives a call from his wife Kelly, who informs him that Allie is being taunted by some boys at school, showing that Allie's parents are worried about her. Allie lives in Montclair, New Jersey with her parents, her grandmother Lynn, who has terminal lung cancer, her younger brother named Jude, and a dog. One day Allie is walking home from school and suddenly her boyfriend Rob is covering her eyes from behind. Rob promises her that one day he will buy a car so he can pick Allie up every day. They walk home holding hands. Rob seems to like Allie. When she gets home, she tells her mother why she's late, and then Kelly suspects that Allie and Rob are together. Allie suddenly sees her dog barking outside and feels like something is going wrong. The evening after dinner, she finds her grandmother smoking in the backyard. Lynn begs her not to tell her mother and she agrees. On the way to her room, she sees her parents arguing about the accident Allie had 3 years ago. She then decides to lie in her bed and watch some news on her tablet while Hugh enters her room. He's worried about her life, especially Rob, and asks if he's a good guy. Her mother wakes Allie up at 3 in the morning. She goes into the living room and sees her whole family, including Glenn, watching the news on TV. According to the news, an outbreak of unknown creatures is occurring in the cities of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. The strange creatures are called Vesp and are easily provoked by loud noises. The US government declares a state of emergency and asks people to stay indoors and keep calm. A loud noise startles everyone and they see several fighter planes in the sky. Allie suggests they go to the country, where it tends to be quieter. They agree and Glenn joins them and brings his gun with him. Finally, they set off in 2 cars. Meanwhile, Allie has a video call with Rob as they drive away from the city. Both promise to stay in touch until the outbreak ends. After a while they stop at a gas station to prepare everything they need. Allie goes to the bathroom with her dog and suddenly he starts barking at a man with a shotgun. The man points his gun at them and tries to hijack Hugh's car. Just as Hugh is about to give him the key, Glenn manages to shoot the man in the leg and they drive away from the gas station. The next day they get into a huge traffic jam that blocks all highways. Glenn decides to change their route and leads them off the road. Out of nowhere, a herd of fleeing deer crosses Glenn's path, forcing him to fall down the embankment. He survives but is trapped in the car. Hugh initially tries to help him, but he asks Hugh to leave him behind and move on to be safe from the creatures. Kelly also tries to call for help, but unfortunately there is no signal. In the end, Hugh promises Glenn that he will seek help and return to save him. As the family returns to their car, their dog suddenly barks again, luring the Vesps to attack their car. Glenn hears the Vesps and then begin firing his gun, leading them away from the car and eventually sacrificing himself. The Vesps return to their car as the dog continues to bark, so Hugh decides to let the dog out of the car, causing Allie to cry in disappointment. After waiting a while, Hugh tells them he has to try something and gets out of the car. Unexpectedly, Lynn starts coughing and draws Vesp to the car. Hugh then slowly picks up an iron and throws it away to distract the Vesp. He realizes that the Vesp can't see and Allie says that they understand sign language and can survive in silence. Unable to use their vehicle due to the noise, Hugh asks for Lynn's lighter and sneaks to Glenn's car. As a decoy, he sets the car on fire so that the family can quickly get out of the car and run through the forest in search of shelter for the night. They find a house with a high fence and a locked gate. They try to open the door, but instead accidentally make a noise from the bell hanging on the locked door. The homeowner, unaware of the situation, comes out and speaks loudly, causing the Vesps to tear her to shreds. They soon find a storm drain to get into the house. Hugh first crawls through the storm drain and then waves to them all as he reaches the front of the house. The rest begin to crawl in when suddenly a rattlesnake startles Jude, causing him to scream hysterically. The dressed Vesps bite Kelly in the leg. Hugh immediately distracts them by turning on a wood chipper and squashing the wasps that fly into it. Finally, the family enters the house peacefully. Later that night, they treat Kelly's wound and Allie tries to contact Rob, who tells her that his parents are dead. She learns that religious cults emerged after the catastrophe. She also tells Rob to come here, but then the call cuts out. The next morning, Kelly's wound gets worse and becomes infected, so Hugh and Allie head out to get antibiotics for her. They arrive in town with no one there. They find a pharmacy and are watched from a distance by a strange man. At the store, Hugh collects the medical supplies and Allie discovers the disgusting vesp eggs growing in corpses. Suddenly the vesps enter the store and hear Allie's surprised voice. Hugh comes up with the idea of distracting the vesps by activating a fire sprinkler system and manages to escape the store with Allie. As soon as they come out, the strange man comes up to them and introduces himself as the priest. He tries to recruit them into his flock called the Hushed, but Hugh and Allie decide to leave him when the vicar points out that he has no tongue. They return home with the antibiotics and Kelly recovers quickly. Allie learns from the CNN news that Vesp cannot survive in the cold place up north. They call the place the Gray, and there is no electricity, leaving the people there cut off from the world as their electronic devices no longer have batteries. In the morning, the priest finds the family's hiding place and shows up with his followers. He asks Hugh again to join their flock, but Hugh refuses and tells them to leave. Then the tongueless priest writes, "The girl is fertile," referring to Allie. Enraged, Hugh takes out his gun and forces the cultists to leave. That evening, Rob lets Allie know that he's heading north to the refuge, but afterward the internet connection cuts out. Thunder rumbles as the whole family falls asleep. Hugh and Kelly are suddenly awakened by a creaking noise outside their house. They find a shocked little girl at the door. After letting her in, they discover that the little girl has no tongue and is a member of the tongueless cult. Surprisingly, they find the little girl hiding several phones in her clothes, and it turns out that the cult has already distributed some phones around the house. At the same time, the phones ring, luring the Vesps to attack their house. They throw the phones into the water and prevent them from ringing. Nevertheless, the cult members manage to break into the house and kidnap Allie while everyone else is busy taking care of the Vesps. Lynn, who sees Allie being kidnapped, follows them and tries to save Allie. She holds off Allie's captors at her own expense, screaming and luring the Vesps to her and the captors while Allie escapes. Unfortunately, one of the cult members takes Allie hostage with a knife to her throat. Eventually, they fight back and kill most of the cult, including the Reverend, who is badly beaten by Hugh. A few weeks later, the family travels north across America and finally arrives at the refuge. Allie charges her tablet in an abandoned Jeep and receives a message from Rob telling her he's already there. Eventually, she meets with him again and they begin to hunt the Vesps with arrows and adapt to the new world. She wonders if the Vesps will adapt to the cold and if humans will adapt to a silent lifestyle like she did when she lost her hearing. And the film ends.